for joining me on the journey. This is Completed Christianity, and in this video we're going to look at how the enemy has taken ancient pagan sun god worship practices and that he's legitimized them, things that the Father detests. He has legitimized them. Sun worship has never gone away. It's alive and well today on planet Earth, all around you, and nobody teaches it, so nobody knows what it is. So let's take a look at some of what the Father says about it, and what the Father says about likenesses and images, and that he wants no part of it. He wants to be represented by no image, that you look at no image and think of him or worship through that image. So in what we're going to read here is going to detail just that. So Deuteronomy 4:15, therefore diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yahweh spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that's on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird. That's important. Winged bird that flies in the heavens. This winged bird that flies in the heavens is a symbol of sun god worship. The likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that's in the water or under the earth. All this kind of sounds like Greek mythology, doesn't it? Unless you lift up your eyes to the heaven and see the sun. See the sun? As you lift up your eyes to the heavens and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the hosts of heavens, and be drawn away into bowing down to them, bowing down to the sun, and serving them, which Yahweh your Elohim has allotted to all peoples under the heavens. And let's also look at Ezekiel 8:13. And he said to me, you are to see still greater abominations in which they are doing. In this chapter, the Father takes Ezekiel as if like room to room and showing him all these abominations that people do. And then he's been on this abomination tour, and he says, you're to see still greater abominations which they're doing. And he brought me to the door of the north gate of the house of Yahweh, and I saw women sitting there weeping for Tammuz. What does that mean? Well, the women sitting there weeping for Tammuz, they weep for Tammuz because he was the son of God, if you will, in ancient Babylonia, the son of Nimrod, that this is the legend anyway, his son of Nimrod, that he was killed by a wild boar when he was, I think, 40 years old. And so for each year they had a day of mourning, 40 days, where they mourned and wept and fasted different things. To some people this probably sounds kind of familiar because people all over the world do this today. And this is where it comes from. These women sitting there weeping for Tammuz. So Tammuz is an artist's rendition of the symbolism of Tammuz. Here on the headband are crosses. That was his symbol in ancient Babylon, the cross. This is one of the reasons that the Vestal virgins, they wore crosses around their necks. They weren't Christians as we know it, but they use the cross as a symbol of worship. This comes from ancient Babylon. Right here is another rendition, a relief of Tammuz, and behind him here you got these crosses here, and this one up here that he's holding, and on each of the spires are pine cones, because pine cones are a symbol of fertility in pagan sun god worship. And so here he is with his crosses that represent who he is. And for a lot of people, you say, oh, is this it's some rendition of what they would say is Jesus. Well, no, this is pagan sun god worship. So then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? You are to see still greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the house of Yahweh, and there at the door of the hall, the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar were about 25 men, and their backs toward the hall of the temple of Yahweh, and their faces toward the east. And they were bowing themselves toward the eastward, toward the sun. So what's so bad about this is that it says that they're between the porch and the altar and the porch. So they got their back to the temple on the porch, the altar's in front of them, and they're bowing to the sun. They're using the altar of Yahweh to worship the sun, and this is egregious sin, highly abominable, and this is why that he says you are to see still greater abominations than these. So as we are to be one body and one spirit, you're called in one expectation of your calling, one master, one belief, one faith, one immersion, one mighty one, and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. We are to have this one faith, but this one faith doesn't allow for bringing sun worship into it. And the enemy, he has done this. He has provided what we now have today as a faulty foundation that we stand on, where we have the messianic faith that the Father intends for us to have, and we have it commingled with pagan sun god worship. And largely that's due to Constantine and the other Romans. He did not convert from paganism to Christianity. He converted Christianity to paganism. And what they really saw was they saw an opportunity for ecumenism. Even all the way back then, it started with a couple of emperors before Constantine came into power, that they were trying to merge all the different sun gods together so that they had cohesion in the empire, so that they had a religious unity in the empire, and they didn't have different sects and different strife going on in the empire. Just like's going on in the world today. This is where they wanted to go. They wanted to move in to a more ecumenical idea. And so they made a church for everyone, Catholic Church. That term, it means universal. It was the church for the messianic believer. It was the church for the pagan tree worshiper. It was the church for the sun god worshipers. It was the church for those who worship the rock. Everybody could come together in one place, in one body, in one unity. Not unity of the faith, but unity in the doctrines and traditions of men. Unity in error. So are we going to be unified in error, or are we going to be unified in truth, in the spirit of truth? So Constantine and the other Romans commingled the messianic faith with sun god worshiping. And this image here is an image of Mithra. And these are the rays of the sun protruding from his head, just like what we see as spikes or spires protruding from the head of the Statue of Liberty. This is where that comes from. It's the rays of the sun. And the face, look it up, the face on the Statue of Liberty is supposed to be, I believe, the face of Adonis. And here, this is Apollo with the 4 horses, with the sun rays around his head, and on the hood ornament, what is that? Oh, a cross. A cross on a pagan image for Apollo. Here's a statue of Constantine, same 4 horses, sun behind his head. So who is he trying to portray himself to be? Trying to portray himself to be the sun god, Apollo. Sol Invictus, the winged bird on the staff. Another, like we mentioned before, the winged bird. That's a symbol of the sun god, of sun worship. This is the Arch of Constantine, and at one time, although now lost to history and time, this statue is a rendition of what used to be on top of this arch. So the statue was on top of this arch, and this arch, all around it, it has images of pagan gods, of pagan sacrifices, of just about pagan anything. No vestige of any kind of what we would call Christian imagery based on the Messianic faith. This slide here, this gives us an idea that, you know, not everybody thinks that this was always the way it was, because this isn't true. This is just what we've been taught. It's been this stuff like this slide. It's been pushed aside. It's been swept under the rug. So the ancient Christians were very careful in the observation of Saturday, or the seventh day. It is plain that all the Oriental or Eastern churches, all the Eastern churches, those are the ones that are like around Jerusalem and eastward toward Rome, from Rome toward Jerusalem. These Eastern churches, the greatest part of the world, observed the Sabbath as a festival. Athanasius likewise tells us that they held religious similes on Sabbath, not because they were infected with Judaism, but to worship Jesus, the Lord of the Sabbath. And Epiphanius says the same. So this is an image here on the arch of Constantine. This is on the arch that we just showed, and this arch of Constantine. This is like the imagery of a pagan festival, with this right here being the pagan god that's being worshipped. And here we have the Arch of Constantine, and in its day it was positioned in just a particular way where the Colossus of Apollo was right behind it, and right here, you know, about belly height, that's the statue that we talked about. And so it was positioned to where Constantine's trying to show himself that he is like Apollo, he is like the sun god, he is the sun god, he's exalted above the sun god. So, you know, another image would have, you know, vantage point would have showed to be just like this scene, and through the arch you would have been able to see the Colossus through the arch at another vantage point, thus placing Apollo beneath Constantine. Also in Constantinople, you had this image of Apollo that Constantine erected up on a pillar, up where the sun would shine behind it from a particular vantage point. And this image here of Apollo closer in gives a little more detail, and zoom in closer, you have the face here of Apollo with the spires coming out. These would be the rays of the sun, just like on the Statue of Liberty. And then Constantine changed the statue that he erected, and rather than having a more traditional rendition of the face of Apollo, he had put basically his own face on the statue, thus making himself the sun god, making himself Apollo. Here we have coins, and these coins are depicting the Constantine on one side and the sun god on the other side. And this is after Constantine's supposed conversion at Milvian Bridge. These particular coins, they prove that Constantine wasn't like what Christianity's made him out to be. He was really, throughout his life, a pagan sun god worshiper. And on this slide we have this stated: on this day in history, Roman Emperor Augustus is made Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of the College of Pontus in Rome. The most important office in the religion of ancient Rome, it is now becomes subsumed with the role of Roman Empire, a Roman emperor. Thus, the highest political office and the highest religious office are now one and the same, a marriage of politics and religion. But what is this date in history? It's 12 BC. So, 12 BC, Emperor Augustus is made Pontifex Maximus, which Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of the College of Pontiffs in Rome. Now, was this a Christian as we know it denomination? Of course not, because it's 12 years before we get into what's known as the Common Era now. So this right here labels this term, Pontifex Maximus, as the high priest of the College of Pontiffs, and that makes it as being the high priest, the pagan high priest, which is what the Roman emperors were. And right here, to this day, in the Vatican, you have the same title emblazoned on the floor, Pontifex Maximus. On the coin here for, looks like Pius XII, Pontifex Maximus. And here we have Pope Benedict, Pontifex Maximus on the coin. And Pope Francis, Pontifex Maximus. And John Paul, Pontifex Maximus. So this particular title, it was never done away with, but this title is the title of the pagan high priest. It was never done away with. It was pre-Christian as we know it, and they still hold up this title today. And this is pagan idolatry. This is a title of pagan idolatry. So, next video, we will look at proof that the Catholic belief system is the modern day continuation of ancient Babylonian sun worship, as if you haven't seen enough already, there's a lot more, and that the enemy has used it to infect and profane the teachings of the apostles. Psalm 89:34, my covenant I will not break, nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Comment down below, and even if you have a comment of opposition, comments of opposition are welcome. Just don't say anything dumb like we're not under the law, we're under grace, because you've been taught to use that scripture outside of the bounds of its intended context. So subscribe now. Hit the button down below and subscribe. And once you subscribe, head over to our channel page, or if you haven't subscribed, come here, click the subscribe button, and then click on the bell icon and choose to send all notifications to make sure that you don't miss out on the next video, and we will see you next time.